Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. The film and television industry is booming in Australia, with Hollywood productions flocking to our relatively safe shores during the pandemic, and Byron Bay has been the focal point of all that attention. Over the past 18 months, locals have been mixing with the likes of Chris Hemsworth, Nicole Kidman, Matt Damon, Zac Efron, Natalie Portman, Melissa McCarthy, the list just goes on. Now, the first and only film studio based in the region, Byron Studios, is looking to expand and become a hub for some of the biggest film and TV productions from around the world. And they've hired new muscle to help them do it. Paul Anderson is the newly appointed Chief Executive at Byron Studios. Paul, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks very much, Sean. Great to be here.
Congratulations on the gig. 17 years at Channel 10, 5 of them as CEO. What prompted the change?
Oh, look, I think it had been coming for a while. I think a lot of people thought I was mad. Quite a few people thought I got fired, actually. Quite an unusual way to go, to resign from a free-to-air network in Australia. Look, I've been there for...
You're unique, at least.
That's right. Not that many people believe it in media circles. But look, I think, in all seriousness, I'd been there for 17 years. I had 5 years as CEO. I'm a big believer that, companies need new blood.
Yep.
Plus also, I thought it was time for me to have a change. And, I actually resigned the Wednesday prior to the Australian Grand Prix that got cancelled in Melbourne, which was clearly the start of this whole latest pandemic saga.
Okay. So it's a massive change from running a major media company, particularly one owned by a US giant, compared to a smaller independent operation. Yeah,
it is. And look, it's an enormous change, an enormously good change. But look, I absolutely loved my time at 10. They were extremely formative years for me, especially the last 5, and the last couple when we were owned by CBS, which was, quite an extraordinary period, not just in my career, but also, as part of the whole landscape in television in Australia, which has, I think, been an enormous positive. So, I think the difference is, you're managing a large organisation owned internationally, and then, moving to something that is, a very small, agile organisation that's got a grand vision, situated in a pretty amazing part of the world, with an incredibly passionate team about what they're doing. So it's been a great change for me.
I love the word agile in this instance, Paul, because I used to run the newsrooms at Fairfax, and then starting Fear and Greed and doing things like this. What I found is that when I ran the newsrooms at Fairfax, pretty much everyone did everything for me. Now I do the photocopying, and I reckon that is agile, actually. And it must be weird when someone like you that ran such a proud and iconic company, you probably are doing your photocopy.
Well, I absolutely fucking find I don't think I have a photocopier, actually. But look, that's a really good point, because I think, we do get used to, working in these big organisations. I grew up in a small farming town in New Zealand. Yeah. So it's pretty cool that sort of, I'm quite proud of myself in some ways that I've thrown all the cards up in the air. And,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
And done something quite different. So, full service.
So why do you think Byron Bay has become somewhat of a mecca for film and TV in recent years? Why is it so attractive?
Look, I think a lot of people ask that question. It's obviously an incredibly beautiful part of the world. There's something quite magical up here. Anyone that comes to Byron on holiday, or, you always feel better about yourself. Look, it's obviously got some natural beauty. It's got a great climate. It's got a number of high-profile people that obviously live up here. But I think there's also many more low-profile people that have chosen to live their life up here, bring their children up here. There's a lot of filmmakers, and there's a large, highly skilled creative community that has lived here for a long period of time, which is probably, now becoming a focus. Mm. So I think it's a combination of all of those things. And, I think those high-profile people that live here have really helped, draw projects to the region.
Yeah. What's the pandemic done generally? At the moment, we're sort of in and out of lockdowns, and Byron Bay is certainly part of that.
Yeah.
In terms of what's happened in the last 18 months with film production in Australia, more generally, rather than specifically at Byron, it seems like COVID hasn't hurt the local industry as much as others.
No, look, it's obviously had Australia, I think in the early stages, obviously handled it a lot better. It was easier to make film and television in Australia than it was in other parts of the world. So I think that's one part of it. The second part is technology, which I think has played a huge part in people doing their jobs, not just in television and film, in any part of the world. So, you can have a production that's being filmed in Los Angeles or in London, and you can have the visual effects work being done here in Byron Bay. So I think that's a large part of it as well.
Has the town of Byron, taking it further from what you're saying there and the shift of creators into Byron Bay and Lennox Head and that general area in northern New South Wales, has the community changed, do you think? Because traditionally it is much more of an agricultural part of the world and tourism, obviously.
Yeah, look, I think that that's just a natural evolution. It probably comes back to this technology combined with the pandemic. I've had lots of people say that, they'd thought about perhaps in 5 years' time making that sea change to Byron or some other part of the world and get out of the city. And I think what the pandemic has done is it's really made people think about things and say, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well go and do it now because we've got to work from home anyway. So it's kind of hastened that up. So look, I think that creative community has always been here. Yes, it's had tourism. Yes, it's had agriculture. But I think that that's sort of brought that to the surface now.
Okay, so tell me about Byron Studios. How did you end up getting involved and taking the job as CEO?
Well, Will Gammon and Mark Holden were the two founders of Byron Studios, and Will has a very successful visual effects business up here called Cumulus. So I met them last year when we moved up here, and it kind of just evolved from there. So they have a vision that, we said there's this large creative community up here. What is missing, and there's, obviously a lot of movies that have been made up here, particularly in the last sort of 12 months or so, is that what's missing is this sort of hub that brings it all together. So their vision is to build these sound stages, to build a studio that becomes more than that, becomes this sort of media precinct. So, you draw in all of the businesses that surround that production of content, so whether it's visual effects or post-production, photography and so forth, into one space, which has those quite big flow-on impacts into the local economy for employment, education, and create something that's sustainable. So I think their vision is not so much about building big boxes just to produce films and television. It's everything else that goes with it, whilst thinking about the community at large, which is something you get in a small region like this.
Stay with me, Paul. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Paul Anderson, Chief Executive Officer of Byron Studios. So how does it work? I'm very limited in my knowledge of the industry. Does Byron Studios pitch for work? Does it create its own kind of microcosm where it has all sorts of skills where people come to it? I don't quite know the process of how you get involved in the industry.
Look, it's a combination of both. So at the moment, we have two studios in Alstonville. So we have the space that, most recently Netflix have been filming their series God's Favourite Idiot with Melissa McCarthy.
In Alstonville?
In Alstonville, yeah. So,
wow.
Which is nice and close to Ballina Airport,
yeah.
And, has lots of space. So we provide the infrastructure, and then, what happens around that with all of the ancillary, the post-production and so forth, that's kind of all up in the air. But, as these industries grow, you end up with, whether it's catering, it's painters, it's set builders, it's electricians, all of those things sort of bubble up around it. So that's kind of what we have created on a small scale at the moment, and our ambition is to create something much larger.
And you mentioned William Gammon, who's worked on Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Terminator. You've got Pat Greer, who's CEO of Ramsay Health. Your screen industry consultant helped discover Russell Crowe, Eric Bana, Hugo Weaving, all these incredible names. Is a lot of it kind of that network? And if you kind of surround yourself with great people, stuff happens?
Yeah, look, it is. It's a great group of people that are involved in the studios. And, that's like any business. You surround yourself with great people. And I think all these people, they all live up here in this Northern Rivers area. They have a passion for the industry.
Yep.
And they want to create something that is sustainable in this part of the world. And it's very different when you're doing that in a regional area like the Northern Rivers, as opposed to doing it in a Sydney or a Melbourne or a Los Angeles or a London. So, yeah, it is. It's that passion and that drive from those people that will make this thing, ultimately succeed.
So, Paul, where would you hope to be in 5 years?
Look, in 5 years, we would hope to have our studios built. We've got a terrific partner in Ballina Council who's very keen to work with us and see this happen. So in 5 years' time, we would love to have these sound stages built and have those sound stages complemented by public spaces. We would like to have an arts precinct, movie theatres, outdoor cinemas and so forth, all surrounding what, we envision as one large media precinct in a pretty unique part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the council there, Ballina Council, which obviously you need the support of any local government area you're in. What about the general population? Do you think they're supportive?
Look, I think they are. And like any new business, when we started in Alstonville with the studios, it's a relatively small town.
Yeah.
So, noise, traffic, all of those things were obviously an issue at the start. But over time, the benefits of having a business like that in your area and just the extra revenue that it brings into the local economy, the jobs that it creates, people slowly start to understand that whilst there's, little annoying things along the way, the overwhelming benefit to the local area is an absolute no-brainer.
And Paul, do you and your family miss living in Sydney or enjoying Byron?
Oh, look, it's funny once you've lived in one place for a long time. It does take you a little time to get your head around that. But, we've got a small farm up here, 20 minutes outside of Byron. I grew up on a farm in New Zealand. Right. So it's great to be sort of back to my roots in some ways and great for the family too, because, people are, the kids are building, veggie gardens and things rather than playing PlayStation.
Yeah, fantastic. Paul, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot.
That was Paul Anderson, CEO of Byron Studios. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.